Welcome as we step into the shadows of 19th century Chicago, where a sinister architect crafted a web of deceit and death. I invite you to explore the tale of H. Holmes, the notorious serial killer behind the Murder Castle, a labyrinth of horror. Let us begin this journey into a world where trust was a trap and every room hid a chilling secret.
Chicago, 1893. The World's Fair has transformed the city into a dazzling showcase of American progress. Electric lights illuminate the white city. Millions of visitors flood the streets, marveling at the future. But 2 miles south, in the neighborhood of Englewood, something darker is being built in the shadows. The ledger doesn't lie. Page 47, November 1892. Glassware and quicklime, $23.50. Rubber tubing and copper fittings, $8.75. Dated exactly 1 week before Emmeline Cigrand stopped writing letters home. Meet Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. That's what he calls himself now. His real name, Herman Webster Mudgett, carried debts and bad memories. Holmes sounds respectable, professional, the kind of man you'd trust with your business or your daughter's employment. He's built what he calls the World's Fair Hotel at 63rd and Wallace. 3 stories of rooms for rent, a pharmacy on the ground floor, and something sinister hidden beneath. The locals call it the Castle. Emmeline Cigrand was 24 when she answered his job advertisement. A skilled stenographer, careful with details, the kind of Midwestern reliability employers loved. She walked through those front doors and smelt something medicinal mixed with something sweet. The scent of a well-run office, she thought, a place with opportunities. Holmes praised her efficiency, never touched her inappropriately. A perfect gentleman. But 10 feet below her desk, someone had quietly ordered 2 more bottles of sulfuric acid that week. The ledger confirms it as oil of vitriol, quantity 2. The building had secrets. Doors that opened to brick walls, hallways that led nowhere. And in the afternoons, when the wood warmed and settled, Emmeline heard something in the walls, a soft hissing, like gas moving through pipes. She filed his papers, notarized his forms, signed documents for properties that would never be claimed. Holmes watched her work with the attention of a man making calculations. He was learning her habits, her trust, what she would question and what she wouldn't. The ledger records what happened next in cold numbers. November 15th, coal delivery, emergency order. November 16th, formalin shipment, medical supplies. November 17th, a receipt from a company that sold articulated skeletons to medical schools. Emmeline Cigrand was never seen again. The disappearances barely registered in a city of millions. A typist asked if it was true that a young woman had gone west with a doctor. A printer mentioned a jewelry counter that closed on payday. But Chicago was consumed by the World's Fair. People came and went every day. Holmes kept advertising, rooms for rent, employment opportunities, always professional, always solvent. He'd perfected the art of making each person believe the last one was accounted for elsewhere. The ledger tells a different story. Medical supply invoices arriving with suspicious frequency. A railroad bill for a crate shipped to a Midwest college, signed with a name that looked right until you noticed the N was written over an M. Those bones would be scrubbed clean of their history, waxed, labeled. A medical student would hold a skull and marvel at human anatomy, never knowing he held someone's daughter. The castle wasn't finished revealing its secrets. Behind a door disguised as a wall, stairs descended into Holmes' true workshop. Heavy tanks connected to gas pipes, metal tables with drainage channels, a chute that led to a furnace below. This wasn't the work of a madman. It was an assembly line designed by someone who understood chemistry and business. Minnie Williams arrived from Texas with her sister Nanny. Minnie had inherited property, but the paperwork was complicated. She trusted Holmes' attention to detail, his promise to untangle the legal mess. Her handwriting showed optimism in its flourishes. Her letters home were full of excitement about her helpful new employer. Nanny was more suspicious. She didn't like how Holmes controlled every conversation, how he always seemed to be reading from rehearsed lines. But Minnie was already under his influence, already believing his promises about their future together. Their last known movements fill 2 pages in the police files. One visited a notary, one shopped for fabric while Holmes waited outside, directing the conversation through the window. The clerk later said there was nothing remarkable except how the gentleman seemed to script every word. Then silence, clean, sudden, absolute. The ledger recorded their erasure with bureaucratic precision. A freight company noted crate dimensions and suspiciously tidy weights. Chemical suppliers shipped acids in smaller bottles to avoid suspicion, a note that would only matter years later when investigators checked the margins. Holmes had turned murder into a business model. The building itself was his partner, custom built for killing. Soundproof rooms, gas pipes with valves only he could operate, acid baths that could dissolve bone, a furnace that burned evidence into ash. November 1894. Detective Frank Geyer walked into the castle carrying a warrant and a ring of keys. What he found wasn't chaos, it was precision. Holmes had fled to Philadelphia months earlier, but his building was still practicing its secrets. The first locked door opened to reveal nothing. The second led to a brick wall. The third opened onto a room with no inside handle. This wasn't architecture, it was a trap disguised as a hotel. Then they found the basement. Heavy tanks connected to gas pipes throughout the building, metal tables with drainage systems, a dissection kit laid out like surgical instruments, and a furnace large enough to accommodate a human body, fed by a chute that dropped straight down from the floors above. The ledger finally made sense. All those chemical orders, the medical supply receipts, the suspicious freight shipments. Holmes hadn't just been killing, he'd been running a factory. They brought out trunk after trunk. Inside, clothes that had belonged to women whose families would later touch the fabric and break down. Letters addressed but never mailed, their stamps carefully removed and saved. A cracked ring that only its wearer would have recognized. The evidence was overwhelming, but proving specific murders was nearly impossible. Bodies were gone, dissolved in acid, burned to ash, or sold as medical specimens. Holmes had been thorough. But the ledger didn't lie. Financial records showed deposits that matched missing persons' last known salaries. Insurance policies taken out on women who died shortly after. Bank transactions that traced a clear pattern of theft and murder. Holmes was arrested in Philadelphia for insurance fraud, but as investigators dug deeper, the scope of his crimes emerged. Not just the castle's victims, but children in other cities. A trail of false names and forged documents stretching back years. During his trial, Holmes played the role he'd perfected, the misunderstood gentleman. He wrote letters claiming remorse while denying guilt. He contradicted himself with the smooth confidence of a man who believed charm could substitute for truth. Holmes was executed on May 7th, 1896, exactly 9 days before his 35th birthday. The castle was demolished in 1938. The city wanted to forget, but the ledger remembers. And the names, Emmeline Sigrand, Julia Connor, Pearl, Minnie, and Nanny Williams, remind us that the truth demands to be heard.